everyone. We have Gemma Craven, CMO of Scribd Inc. on today. She's got more than 25 years of experience at the intersection of brand, culture, and tech. She's worked at a lot of influential agencies and different companies, most recently now at Scribd Inc. And I bring that distinction up because there's a handful of companies or products within the Scribd family, which I was not aware of some of them. So I'd love for you to start off by talking a little bit more about your background and what you're working on at Scribd Inc. and just what your role encompasses across these brands.
Yeah, great to be here, Jordan. Thanks for having me. So, yeah, at Scribd, I am CMO, and I work across, that means working across 4 products, Scribd.com, SlideShare, Everand, and Fable. We are, the 4 products are connected because they help people move from discovery to deep understanding. I can tell you a bit more about that. And I think the best way to do that is to think about the day of the life of, say, somebody in the PR or marketing. As you know, in the PR space, you might be starting your day with your sort of research mode and going into discovery mode on a new client because you need to write a presentation later that day. So you turn to Scribd.com, which is home to over 350 million documents on every topic imaginable, uploaded by our community. And you might find a paper written by another PR pro on AI rollout within a comms department, or a technical paper written by an engineer at your new client. And so you do your research and develop understanding on Scribd.com, and then turn to writing a presentation to meet the client. Whilst writing that presentation, you hit a inspiration bump in the road. So you fire up SlideShare, which is home to 25 million presentations shared by subject matter experts globally. And there you find some inspiration that helps you create that deck. You finish the deck, you ship it, and have a successful client meeting. Later that day, you want to decompress, unwind at home, and turn to a book. So you open Everand, which is our reading app, home to millions of audiobooks, ebooks, and podcasts. I'm currently listening to Bonfire of the Murdochs on Everand, which I thoroughly recommend to anybody who still misses Succession, like I do. And finally, if you want to talk about that book or connect with other readers, that's where Fable comes in, which is the 4th brand in our portfolio. Fable's a social reading community, home to hundreds of thousands of book clubs, a place to discuss, find new books, as well as track your reading activity. So for 4 products, a spectrum from understanding to inspiration to understanding, depending on where you are kind of in your journey.
Yeah, that's quite a lot of like the list, covering the full experience from the consumer side of things. I've been a Scribd customer for a while, and I started as on the free version, and then I was using it more and more. So I went to the next tier. And I like to use it in particular for what you're saying, like deep research, but also as just an owner of a boutique PR firm, trying to do some of that deep research on like more like business types of use cases and assets. So learning things about like sales prospecting, or how to up level your brand on LinkedIn. But definitely a lot of like high quality, from what I've experienced personally, like mainly like editorial. But are you saying too that if you're a Scribd customer, that you get access to these other products as well, or are they all kind of priced separately?
Great question. So we sort of separate them out into 2 parts of the universe. So if you're a Scribd.com user, you also get access to SlideShare, given it's that kind of research understanding mode. And then on the reading side, Everand and Fable, we have a bundled subscription for those 2. So
Yeah.
it's 2 sides of the business, depending on which mode that you're in.
Mm-hmm. Cool. That makes a lot of sense. Thanks for explaining that. And doing some more background on Scribd, your company went through a pretty significant rebrand last year and updated your positioning as the antidote to AI slop. Clearly, there's a lot of backlash happening with the oversaturation of AI generated content and kind of the increased desire for more human human backed, human created quality content. Can you tell us a little bit more about that thinking and how Scribd is positioning itself these days?
Yeah. So our brand belief at Scribd is that thinking is worth saving. And
Mhm.
this comes from a company whose mission is to advance human understanding. So it's around providing the source materials, the ability for human users to develop their understanding, to do the research, to continue their own learning journey. As I was saying, Scribd.com is an applied knowledge platform that's home to over 350 million documents of all types. And the thinking was, realize we're sitting on this corpus. The brand is the product, and the product is the brand, and that was really important for us to protect and build into the rebrand. And to be clear, the problem is not with AI itself. We use AI extensively internally and to build an intelligent layer into our products, but it's more around skipping the thinking stage and making sure that we stand for protecting human thought and the research and understanding piece.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that's really the difference between researching deeply and sort of asking for quick answers. And that was really the genesis behind that rebrand.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And in addition to the rebrand, I noticed that yearly Scribd puts out a state of reading report. So, what are some of the findings from your most recent one, and what is that telling us about the relationship between technology and human behavior?
The state of reading report came from our reading products, so Everand and Fable. And as you rightly say, it's something we conduct annually to really understand how, why, when people are reading, given the importance it plays in all of our lives. And what we found this year is that people are reading more in multiple formats, and they're reading to escape the stress of daily life. They're reading to relax, and they're reading to kind of disconnect. I think that was a very big finding. And the second was really that how they're discovering what to read next. And they're turning to other people. So other people's recommendations over bestseller lists, over recommendation lists in their favorite apps. So it's really what the others around them are reading. I think the key here is to think about what we learned, which was it's how that happens at scale. So they're turning to other people, say in a reading community, in a book club, to really sort of connect and learn and engage. And it's the technology layer here is connecting with other people and doing that at scale. And just thinking about the piece you asked around sort of relationships and what that means in terms of, sort of technology trust. People aren't rejecting technology. Our research showed us they're actually renegotiating their relationship with it. So, technology to help them find others, talk, connect, engage, and consume the book that they might be reading. But it's really thinking about the role that it plays in their life in a world where there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of content, and sort of the moments that technology use is right for them, and the moments that it's not.
All right, that makes a lot of sense. So, expanding on that, beyond AI generated content, and that not being a focus for Scribd, how is Scribd using AI in its actual platform to drive more human connections across your brands?
Yeah, we use AI quite extensively, internally, operationally, as well as within our platforms to help build an intelligent layer on top of content. So whether that's giving you on script.com an intelligent summary of a document that might help you understand whether you want to go deeper, download that, and apply more of your own research to that, to an assistant that might help you discover your next book. So it's tools to help with the consumption experience rather than replace that deep that the need for human thought.
Yeah, absolutely. Human thought and input continues to be, I would say, arguably one of the most important parts in terms of what goes into the process in order to make sure that the output and the final deliverable of whatever you're getting still resonates with your audiences.
If you're ready to boost your business with top-notch content, podcasts, videos, or need expert support in public relations and digital marketing, we want to hear from you. Simply contact the form link in the show description or visit growthstackmedia.com to schedule a call.
You've said in the past that one of the most interesting problems you're working on right now is what AI-led transformation looks like internally for marketing teams that aren't necessarily the most technical, but they're kind of brushing up against wanting to incorporate it into their workflows on a daily basis, adapting it to upskill their jobs. So for media and communication leaders navigating that challenge of like how they can appropriately and effectively adapt AI into their daily workflows, what would you recommend to them? And then maybe what are some things that you would tell them to avoid?
Yeah. Um, So after of an initial tool rollout, first of all, and allowing the time and space for your teams to experiment and see where, AI fits into their day and the room to understand and learn with it. It's first of all, understanding where they're at once they've been through that kind of initial uptake moment. So we actually ran surveys internally to understand where teams were at and what we needed to hear from them so we could understand what came next. And actually, we found that there'd been a lot of adoption and people were using tools, but there was some need for clarification in terms of role and what their roles were becoming and where the AI fit into their daily life. So I'd first of all recommend that kind of taking a pulse check of teams and understanding their comfort level and the areas you need to really focus on. From that, but understanding that the shape of work is really changing. Um, Increasingly, AI is handling that middle layer, the executional layer, which means the human level on top of it is really about judgment, strategic thinking, and curation. And so understanding that evolution in terms of roles, and that then ties back to working with teams to think about what their role is becoming, even going so far as thinking about like, what is the actual sort of journey that we're looking at with our teams, our employees as they move through different roles and what those roles are becoming. So thinking about how work is changing. This is a transformational moment. It's more than just a tool rollout, as we've seen in the past with big technological changes. This comes with changes to how we do our job. Um, I'll give you some examples of within kind of PR and marketing within my teams. For example, we've automated a whole editorial content operations layer for our editorial team who write for our blog and across our newsletters. That doesn't mean we've outsourced the written work to the AI. It's that actually the behind the scenes work it takes to concept and produce say a blog post is now fully automated where it used to take days, and now the team can work on the creative thinking and the writing and the actual kind of community engagement, for example, that happens certainly on our Fable blog. From a PR perspective, again, the supporting work, so measurement, briefing sheets, research, the kind of the background material that and operational components that allow a PR team to then focus on the human part, which is media relations, understanding kind of the ebbs and flows of stories, trends, really being the voice, the eyes, ears, and voice of a company. So again, it allows those teams to focus where their strengths are. Um, uh, AI is changing management. I talked about the what we're seeing in terms of it now sort of executing in the middle. And so what it takes to actually manage, something that we didn't account for or are noticing is AI slop is entering the workplace too. So a manager may now need to spend time working through what is a machine output that hasn't been well governed or is actually a genuine point of view. And so managing that and understanding that what you put into a tool is essentially what you get out and it can't be used as an outsourcing option for like that strategic thought and understanding. So it does actually amplify where there are issues that you may need to sort of solve or work on with a member of a team if they're, um, do see that the AI outputs you can instantly recognize when something's not had much proactive thought and strategic work done there. Um, and then I'd also say recommending to teams, if we're looking at tasks and it's a moment of like, oh, let's just stop and think about how can this be automated? How can I build this into a skill that means we can automate this in the future? The point then that looking at now, the advice is how can you make that into a skill that your team can then use, and how can this be shared? And how can um, the layer underneath, the data underneath, stay up to date so that your agents aren't working on an outdated data set? Because, as we know, AI can confidently share information that can be wrong. And so having that kind of data set that a team would work through, like who are we? How do we work? If there's a brand voice, how's that built out? So that becomes like that golden data set underneath all work that's being carried out. So thinking about this as a bigger organizational transformation versus a tool rollout, talking to teams, understanding where they're at, helping reshape jobs and the job, not from the title down to roles and responsibilities, and seeing the moments where there are touch points that you need to focus on, like I mentioned, the AI
Right.
slop, AI slop entering the workplace as well as in the internet around us.
Right. And I think people, like you said, can kind of like sniff it out from a mile away, and it can erode brand trust even. You mentioned skills, and that's been coming up quite a bit. Maybe not all of our listeners might not know what skills are. The context I'm aware of them in is Claude skills in particular. Obviously, there's competitor platforms that have their own version of that. But when you're talking about skills, can you explain a little bit more about what that is, and if Scribd has its own kind of internal platform in which you're storing and sharing these skills, or if you're using other kind of partner platforms to build on top of that?
Yes, a skill is a repeatable set of instructions that can be applied to a task to automate it to ensure consistency. For example, review this brand briefing document and make sure that the scrib.com brand voice is applied throughout. You can, to your point, these are tied to Claude as I'm talking about them, given that's the tool that we're using the most widely. Um, and the good thing about a skill is it helps to automate the task, it helps to ensure consistency, and it can be updated to keep in um, sync with changing instructions. We are building these out both at the company level and at the team level. So we're a product based company, large engineering and product design organization, and their skills are very much tied to the products, coding and building and shipping products. Whereas on a PR and marketing team, our skills are more tied to brand building, program development, measurement, anywhere where there's a repeatable task that we can um, make that faster and easier for our team members to execute on consistently. So, how they're being stored, there's a central kind of skills library organizationally, and then at the team level too. And as you'd imagine, the PR, the marketing team, our skills are very different than those, say, in the HR team or in the finance team. So there's a need for them to be sort of stored at the team level as well as like a larger repository that is available company wide. It's a large transformational moment. This what we're seeing, I think, is really interesting. Has been all these news reports around companies letting people go because of AI usage, and actually the pendulum has swung back in the other direction, because to adopt and roll out and use AI effectively, you actually need more people rather than less. And you do need various layers of, I'd say, an AI to council as well as executors and subject matter experts within teams to really help, you know, folks adapt to using AI both within their knowledge set and through the rhythms of the company.
Right. So we've during our discussion, we've covered a lot of AI practical applications where it's kind of wanted and where it's needed in terms of workflows and unlocking productivity, where we don't necessarily want it, which comes down into like some of the richness of the quality of content that we're consuming across the platforms. So if you had one prediction for 2027, like where is all this going? And then also we'll just want to hear about the best way our listeners can get in touch with you.
My prediction for 2027 is that by next year, your most important customer won't necessarily be human. And so to think about externally the importance of reputation, because before a person has come across you, your brand, your company, then that has been determined by AI, which has read your consumer reviews, it's read your press releases, it's read your Wikipedia entries, it's read every single touch point and made a judgment. And that reputation is going to have a monetary value that needs to be reported at the board level. And so I predict that this is moving very quickly and that reputational scores are going to be something that we're all going to be looking at, and there'll be a monetary value assigned to it that we look at across other sort of business metrics too.
Okay, yeah, we'll have to look out for that benchmarking there. I think that's a really good prediction, and I haven't heard that, so definitely will keep my eye on it. And so, Gemma, for everyone, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Thanks, Jordan. So you can find me on LinkedIn at Gemma Craven, and I look forward to connecting with listeners.